Doing the land portion is John Carroll with Land Advisors. He has been a broker with Land Advisors Tucson office since 2012. He specializes in applying his expertise and attention on the marketing and sales of residential land and investment properties throughout southern Arizona. As a fifth-generation resident, John has extensive knowledge in each unique submarket around the metro area. He's been involved in the lot sales for the master plan communities of Gladden Farms 1 and 2, Rancho del Lago, La Estancia, Dove Mountain, and Rancho Vistoso.
I really wanted to drive home on two major concepts. That's where we are today and where we're going in the future. So let's look at where we are today. Home builder owned single family finished lot count is at 2,700 lots. Permits are up 15.2% from where we were last year, which is fantastic. Single family active subdivisions. We have 77 active subdivisions in the Tucson market. We have 44 that have less than a year of inventory. This is pretty scary. We are expecting that we're going to add 20 new communities and we will sell out of those 44, which means we're going to have a net loss of 24 communities in the Tucson area. That's never a good thing. Having year over year net loss of communities, we need to get that to a positive community count year over year. Lots purchased year to date, 751. Last year, we were at 1,249. That means we're down 40%, but permits are up 15%. So it's not really mixing side by side. We need to be really active. We need to be buying about 1,500 lots for the first 6 months of the year, but we're not quite on par. We're under half of that. So where are we going? I think that's really the major story. In the Tucson area, we broke it down into 3 categories. We have platted and engineered, we have partially entitled, and we have zoned unentitled land. This whole market or pie graph makes up about 42,000 lots, but we need to be active in getting these lots from the zone and unentitled into the other buckets. So the platted and engineered segment is about 3,500 lots in the Tucson metro area. That's only about 1 year of supply. Partially entitled makes up about 2 to 3 years of supply, but we need to start moving these partially entitled, getting the plats completed, getting the engineering documents completed, getting all the master infrastructure in, so that way we have shovel-ready lots ready to go for the builders. And what really makes up the most of our, or the bulk of our market is these zoned pieces of property or even unentitled pieces of property. And this can include some of the state land stuff or other future developments that will be going forward. So everyone asks, where are these, right? Tucson looks big open space. We can develop most of it, right? Well, we have state land, BLM, national forest, and we also have some Indian reservation that we can't develop on. So it really cuts it down as to what, or it shows the defined area that we can develop. So when we're looking at the platted and engineered lots, it's pretty straightforward where builders' main focus is. We see most of the area being up in the northwest and the southeast. This is where lots are available to be developed, and we can get it in a quick time. So looking out 3 to 5 years, these are the partially entitled lots where we need some engineering plans, or we need 404 permits, or we need something to get it out into the market in front of these builders' hands. It's really, again, the bulk focus is up in the northwest and the southeast area. We have some plays out in the southwest, but that's really the more affordable play. So what does it look like going out 5 to 10 years where we have this zoned and unentitled land? It's, again, up in the northwest and, again, in the southeast. That's where the bulk of our activity will be in the Tucson metro area, we think, in the next 5 to 10 years. And the state land is a major player in how the future of Tucson progresses. So in summary, growth has continued. We're up about 140% from where we were in 2011. We're not seeing crazy numbers of 50, 60, 70% year over year. We're seeing a pretty steady growth of 13%. This is fantastic. This is what we want to see. We don't want to see the huge run up and then huge crash. And we're also continuing to see or receive new job announcements. You know, Texas Instruments, that's fantastic. Amazon, you know, that's what we need to have, because these people are coming out and they're buying homes. With the limited resale opportunities that are out there, it really drives the focus towards this new home development. Community counts, I touched a little bit on this. We're really selling faster than anticipated out of these well-located master plan communities. If we're selling faster, that means these master plans that have taken so much time and so much work to get out in front of everyone, they're just wrapped up. You know, we can sell through 200 lots in 18 months. It should really be about 3 years of inventory. These builders were anticipating 2, 3, 4 sales a month, but they're really seeing 6, 7, 8, 9 sales per month. And this really goes to, we need to open more communities. And by opening more communities, this provides more options to the consumers as to where they can live in pockets. And I think the most important thing is the entitlements side of everything. We need to really begin finding solutions for new infrastructure, and we also need to begin the process of platting all these lots, platting all the zoned properties to supply land for the future.
Kevin Volk has specialized in retail property transactions with Volk Company since 2014. His listing experience includes land, new construction, shopping centers, and net lease investments. He has represented restaurant and retail clients in leases and has represented buyers of both owner-user buildings and investment properties. He's also the winner of the Volk Company's Isaac Figueroa Award for facial grooming in both 2015 and 2017. Give a hand to the brokers. All right.
Wanted to share kind of my thoughts on where we are retail-wise. Retail, you can see in the research snapshot, we're at about 5.6%. This is a good improvement. It's not as dramatic as the improvement in, say, industrial, where there's been quite a decrease in vacancy. But we have been experiencing really good broad-based activity. From my perspective as a broker, you know, we didn't have a slowdown at the beginning of this summer. We are seeing activity a little bit quieter this quarter than the last quarter. But what I've been seeing is the local folks, the local and regional tenants beginning to feel the confidence that we've seen reflected in consumer confidences in terms of indexes nationally, and that's being felt locally. So they're reaching out and ready to pull the trigger on a new location or a relocation. Some of the trends that we're seeing, one way to define the trends that we're seeing in retail is with the name of the tenant we were talking about this morning, Amazon. Amazon has made it clear that they're willing to look at getting involved in every business. And so what we're seeing, whether it's from retail investors looking for net leased properties or landlords looking for tenants that are going to be stable, is Amazon or internet resistant. So we're seeing fewer retailers. There's still discount retailers and high-end luxury retailers at either end of the market that do well. You've seen a lot of expansion from TJX through TJ Maxx, Home Goods, and Marshalls recently. So they've continued to do well since the recession. And then there are luxury tenants in specific contexts that do well, but we're seeing a lot less retailers, very few in shops contexts, and we're seeing a lot of service, whether the trend that I've noticed, you can see these categories pop up in recent lease transaction reporting. Pets. What are people spending money on that isn't retail or is retail, but mostly service? So you've got pets. Car washes have been extremely active. It's very interesting to see the sharp shift away from buying goods towards buying services. And of course, the most prominent category within the service category is restaurants. Restaurants continue to be very desirable. I remember talking to tenants, either startup or local operators who were looking to expand a few years ago, and there were a number of small former restaurant spaces available. There still are former restaurant spaces available. They tend to be in the 5,000 square foot plus area. That's difficult to operate on today's increased overhead with the increasing minimum wage and food costs concerns. But what we're seeing is that the restaurant spaces that we have that are good quality restaurant spaces are turning over very quickly. I think we've done in our office at Volk Company about 25 restaurant leases in the past year. It's just been a very active category. related to that is on the triple net investment side, which is the most active part of our buyer and seller market. And you're seeing traditional centers and strip centers put up for sale, and there's not as much enthusiasm for them. Whereas the single tenant net leased properties, especially restaurants, are continuing to trade. Had some recent sales at Irvington and 919, Marana Marketplace, and different parts around town where those single tenant properties that meet the criteria, which is internet resistant and good quality real estate, are trading at rates, whereas you can tell there's diminished enthusiasm for more traditional space and even shopping centers that are well anchored, but with a lot of shop space. Groceries are one of the biggest drivers of development of retail in Tucson. We've seen more grocery stores close than open. The grocery stores that are planned, whether the Fry's at 22nd Houghton, Fry's at Saddlebrook in Catalina, Safeway, which has been constructed, the new Sprout Center in Sahuarita, which we're working on, those are in underserved outlying communities. And so what we're seeing is a lot of these vacant grocery stores. There's a lot of developer interest, and a category that seems to be stepping up is, again, not retail, not grocery, but fitness. There's a lot of fitness users looking now, and the trend seems to be we're all just going to be eating and then working it off. So that's maybe the most succinct way to summarize retail real estate trends right now. And similar to what John was saying, those areas are the future. The Houghton Town Center and the Old Vale and Houghton area. Marana, we're working on a development at the northeast corner of Cortera and I-10 where we've got a micro hospital and a very large format retailer that aren't announced yet, but the national retailer isn't announced yet. And we've got lots of activity for pad space in the front. Those areas where there are positive income stories and there are positive population growth stories are really where the development is focused. And then coffee continues to be, there seems to be an unlimited demand. Based on my rough estimation, you all should have drunk 10 coffees by now to justify how consistently there are more coffee tenants wanting to expand, whether it's local or whether it's Dutch Bros coming in and working on a lot of different sites after now Broadway and Wilmot being done. Just got a blast that there's a new coffee tenant coming to town. So again, eat, drink, work it off. That's the story of retail in Tucson.
Max Fisher doing the industrial portion. Max Fisher specializes in the leasing and sale of industrial and business park properties, including flex, research and development, warehouse and distribution, and manufacturing space. He has completed over 50 industrial transactions so far this year.
The vast majority of my work is multi-tenant industrial business parks. So with these multi-tenant industrial business parks, the vacancy is just dropping and dropping. The bread and butter of our market is small businesses in these business parks, and they're doing great. They're expanding. We're raising rates. They're not pushing back. And with the vacancy decreasing, we're starting to see some spec development. Pat Welkert had one on Orange Grove and I-10 and leased out before it was even built. So there's lots of talk about these spec business parks, and I think we'll see an increase in these spec parks pretty soon. Here's just a snapshot of what the rates are in these flex industrial business parks throughout town right now. Northwest Market's doing great. Grant and I-10. Vacancy out there is around 3%. Then as you shift further south, vacancy goes up to 10% around the airport. It's a little tough to lease space. It's just that trend from northwest down south. It gets a little less expensive and tougher to lease space. Here's just a few comps of different areas for these small incubator spaces, and just a shot of what they're going for, how long they were on the market, the percentage of office build out and warehouse build out. 3250 South Dodge, that was one of the most recent purchases. That was purchased at $52 a foot, about $6.5 million. And when Preston Companies acquired that park, rates were at 30, 40, 50 cents a foot gross, and we're raising rates, and we're getting 69, 72 cents a foot out there. Pretty surprising, but they're leasing out like crazy. 3100 North Stone, that's Stone in Fort Lowell. A little bit of a tough market. That space was on the market for a year, just leased out a few weeks ago, 65 cents a foot. Grant and I-10, Forbes, 78 cents a foot, 50% office, 50% warehouse. Camino Martin, that's Ina and I-10 area, 70 cents a foot. There are no warehouse vacancies up there right now that I know of. And so when we have those small markets like that, we're just pushing rates by 5 cents. If I get another vacancy in Camino Martin, I'll mark it at 75 cents, and I think we'll get it pretty easily. Research Loop, 22nd and Pantano, 68 cents a foot. Same thing over there, these small incubator spaces. No vacancies out there right now, at least what Preston Companies has. So we'll be raising rates. Probably next vacancy, we'll do 72, 73 cents a foot. South Euclid, that's the downtown market. That's a little bit rougher of a property there, 52 cents a foot. Not much vacancy there, maybe 8 to 10%. And we're starting to raise rates there. So what's affecting these rising rates and lower occupancy? The strong housing market. A lot of these businesses that occupy these spaces are businesses that serve the housing market. So HVAC contractors, builders, all different types of contractors. And then, of course, aerospace and defense manufacturing, all these basically vendors for Raytheon and DM and all those businesses. Mining, starting to see more engineering firms, industrial supply companies come into town to serve the new mine in Patagonia, hopefully Rosemont. Business owner confidence. These owners aren't pushing back on the rates, and they're expanding, and they're confident in their businesses, and it's great for the town and great for the market. And no new development for any of these industrial flex business parks. So with the shift in technology that's obviously affecting retail, how's it affecting the industrial and flex market? Google and Yelp has affected the industrial market big time, because if you think about how valuable retail was 20 years ago without Google, that's how people found businesses. Now they're going online and searching. So you could get a space for half the rate or a third, a quarter of the rate and be in a business park off the road. New distribution technologies means more demand for distribution space. Distribution is a great market to be in right now. E-commerce is on fire, which means more demand for distribution. The marketing side of industrial real estate. These business parks are not areas where people usually drive through. And so people really aren't, calling on signs or even calling brokers. They're just going online and finding these spaces. So as a broker, it's really important that these tenants can find these vacancies online. They're not going to be driving through Dodge and 44th or 46th and Evans. So you got to be able to find the tenant or find the buyer through those search engines and Google AdWords, all those different avenues. Very similar to what Zillow has done to the residential market. There's been a lot of talk about humans in the manufacturing business and machines taking over. From every manufacturing firm that I've dealt with recently, they have a shortage of machinists, and these machines are not, and the newest machines, they don't operate on their own. They need a human to operate with it, and that doesn't seem to be changing at all. So there is a shortage for the manufacturing workers right now, and those are good paying jobs too. A lot of people think manufacturing is not a great industry to be in, but these jobs are starting off at 15, 20 bucks and going up from there, and that's a pretty good line of work to be in without a college degree or much experience. Just a few e-commerce transactions done recently. These businesses, they have their own website online. They market online. It's really cheap for them to market. They don't need retail space or anything like that. So there's this big demand for industrial for these businesses. They have maybe one office, the rest warehouse. They distribute out of their warehouse, and I'm seeing a lot of this right now.
For the office portion of the broker roundtable is going to be Dave Volk. Dave specializes in office and medical properties and has completed over 2,000 transactions in the last 30 years, ranging from portfolio dispositions to repositioning older assets. He represents a wide array of clients from the Fortune 100 to numerous local nonprofits with clients in behavioral health, defense, medical, and financial services.
We do our stats differently, and in fact, some of our researchers are here. But there is a stat, if you look on the office page, it shows the vacancy rate going down fast, and our numbers show it even faster, and lease rates going down. And we have the same thing, and if anyone in the room who happens to be involved in real estate realize that when vacancy rates go down, usually rates don't go down too. But that's not an error, that's actually happening for a reason. And that's kind of what I thought I'd mostly hit on today, is what's really happening with our market. And it's also interesting, because I looked at the numbers. Most people in the country follow an 8-year business cycle, recession overbuilding, recession overbuilding. I started looking at the math, and we follow a 16-year business cycle. I said, wouldn't that neat? We slow things down for the brokers so they can really do the home equity credit line thing for like an extra few years before the next market. So we have our booms every 16 years. We have them in 84, 86. We have them in 99, 2003. And this one's overdue, even on our 16-year calendar. So what's happening is, and I have to explain, we do our own research differently. We have a different database because we don't put in owner-user, so we don't have the Raytheon campus in our base. CoStar does. We just have a smaller denominator. So for us, the vacancy rate the last 5 years, we only track spec buildings, owner-user, that kind of project. And for the last few years, the vacancy rate in the office market has hovered at 19 and 20. Just for like 5 years, it sat there flat. In the last, just about 2 years, the vacancy, here's my PowerPoint projector. The vacancy rate went from 20% down to 11% in 2 years. I mean, that's really huge. So you have the vacancy rate going from 20% to 11%. Right now it's 11.4. By year's end, it should be 11%. Next year, at some point, it should cross into 10% territory. And for us, the rule of thumb is generally when the vacancy rate goes below 10% is the tipping point. That's the shift from a tenants market to a landlord market. And I'm waiting for lightning to strike because some guy in Tucson after 10 years says, oh, it might be a landlord's market. I'm waiting for someone to either punch me or the lightning to hit, or it's almost sacrilegious to say that word. But it could actually become a landlord's market when we get below 10%, and that could be anywhere sometime in 2019. And what happens when the market gets strong is the division between the different property types becomes more evident. When the market is lousy, in 1985, everybody said, okay, what's the cheapest building? The cheapest Class C building was 14 bucks or 13 bucks. All right, we're all going to price it. We're just looking for somebody with a pulse who could pay my rent. When the market gets strong, you start, if you can push it, you do. So the Class A buildings new, the Class A buildings downtown, Class A buildings, Tucson's version of Class A, in the foothills, raise their rates. Some of those guys have started raising their rates a couple bucks. I have some projects that raised the rent a couple bucks in the last couple years. At the high end that happens, but Tucson is also, there's waves of demand. Downtown, location matters. Downtown, 50s and 60s was important. Then, and poor Robert here worked at this big heat map for me that I'm getting ready to show, but it's not quite ready yet. But Tucson's growth went east in the 80s, and then it swung back, and it went north, and the condo boom, and now it's going back along I-10. I've got a lot of clients calling saying, hey, our corporate guys in Phoenix want me closer to I-10. Can you get me over there? And think about all the office space that's up and down I-10. You know, it's not real easy. But even so, the demand for office space is shifting west. It is not going east. I had a lot of properties in the east side of town. You know, they're not worth so much anymore. And so what's happening is if you're on the far east side of town and you have big chunks of space, you used to ask $18, $19 full service. Competition was there, no demand. You took it to 16. I'll be the first guy to hit 15. Kind of a race to the bottom. You can go to lots of buildings from Wilmot East, 13 and 14 bucks a foot rent, and they'll be happy to get it. And frankly, I hate to knock a market, but I don't think that the east side of town, from an office perspective, has at least in the foreseeable future, a very good future as far as value goes. The larger tenants and the mid-sized tenants aren't there. It used to be, we would get an inexpensive listing back from a lender. We could always say, oh, don't worry, I'll find some nonprofit that'd be happy to get a great deal on a nice office building. Now I've got nonprofit clients who had those buildings on the east side of town, and they're saying, everyone's complaining, we need to go west. And that's why I think the graphs do make sense. We have the same data. We have a market where the rate goes from 20 to 11, and in the Class A markets, the rates go up. And the B markets, the concessions are going down. The rates should be going up soon. And then the east side and the C-class property where demand is soft, they've slashed their rates. 18 to 13 is a huge drop. And that's a full service number, which probably means, yeah, do the back out, you know, $8 to $3 net. You know, and so we obviously see different futures for those things. For the east side properties, you're getting down to salvage value, you're getting down to repositioning, you're getting down to flipping it to an apartment, a storage site. Not quite down the land value yet, but getting close. For most of Tucson, which is the B-class market, rates, according to the laws of supplies and demand, when you go from a tenant market to a landlord market and space is tight, and your tenants looking for B or B plus space are getting frustrated because they can't even find what they want. The laws of supply and demand, again, I'm waiting for lightning to hit me, say that rates go up. A few Class A projects have raised their rates a bit. It's inevitable. Again, I have a hard time getting the words out of my mouth that rates should be going up. But they have to be headed that way, if not this year, if not next year. Usually when rates go up, it tends to get sticker shock. You have a period of time where they stop relocating because they tell the supervisor, oh yeah, I can move to another building for the same price. They do the market search with their broker. They can't. Everyone gets frustrated, and they end up renewing for a few more years because they don't know what else to do. And so generally this cycle of the market and the B market, you see a lot of people not relocating, a lot of renewals, and a lot of renewals at great terms for the landlord, no TIs or very little TIs. A market, time to start building. Whenever you build a new product, you don't build B or C. In all markets, you generally build A. And so the only new construction and the spec basis that people have been thinking of is A. It's going to be, if you can find some land in the foothills, which is tough, and the downtown area. It helps that Rio Nuevo subsidizes things with G-plets and so on. And so newer projects will probably be downtown for the time being. I don't know when anyone's ever going to put up a B-plus spec office building. So again, just trying to cover the marketplace. As those rates go down, there's going to be some shifting, probably a lull and relocation for a year or so, and then people will gradually get over their sticker shock. And I think that landlords will have projects well occupied that are worth putting money into, can look at slightly raising rates. There's also a new kind of investing in the office market. I have friends who buy a lot of duplexes, residential, and they don't look for appreciation, and they don't look for rent growth. They just buy it, and they say, hey, I'm making a decent return. I got principal reduction in 15 years, all in the free and clear. That's good enough for me. And if you look on a lot of the sales happening lately on the east side of town, you know, the general thing we all do in this room, you buy a property, you fix it up, you get 5-year leases, you go for your cap rate, you sell it, and you make your spread. For a lot of these guys now, they're looking at, I'm just going to buy a building at a great price in the east side of town, and I'm not projecting any rent growth. I'm not going to do much in the way of TIs for tenants. I'm going to keep it 75, 80% full. I didn't pay a lot for it, and I can just write out the cash flow, and hey, in 15 years, my note's paid off. And then I don't care because I got a building that's free and clear, and how can I get hurt with a free and clear property? And so I don't know if you call that, I don't know if there's a word for that, as is investing or status quo, laissez-faire. I don't know, there should be a word for that, but investing is always meant to me, you buy, you do the 5 and 10-year leases, and you sell it at a cap rate, and you make your spread, and you go on to the next one. This is more of a long-term buy, hold, I don't want to say negative, but it's a don't expect improvement kind of future. And that would actually work for a lot of the smaller buildings on the east side of town. They're well built, and they cash flow. They're just not going to see a lot of upside. And then there's a couple other things I'll point out. In the medical market, you all read about managed care and insurance and all those wonderful things out there. That does have an effect because what's happening now is the consumers of medical office space is transitioning. It's not the doctors anymore. It's not the owners of the practice. I'll go meet with a physician. We're selling our building. Why? Are you moving? No, the hospital bought our practice. And we need to go. And so now whoever's going to buy the building that's decent size might be another hospital run practices. It used to be if we had 1,400, 1,800 foot, 2,000 foot single practitioner offices, you know, for the 1 or 2 doctor, 1 doctor's office, 3 exam rooms, for the person coming out of med school starting to hang up his or her shingle. We don't even tour those. We're lucky if you get a tour once a year now. No one's renting a 12 or 800 foot single, you know, 1 doctor space. A bigger space where a hospital-run association can come in, yeah, but the individual doctor is not active in the real estate market that much anymore. There's people that are exempted from insurance, like dentists or plastic surgeons and so on. But for the most part, it's really the hospital and the insurance companies running things, which means there's a migration back, and this is happening in every city in America. This isn't unique to Tucson. A migration back to the on-campus. And so for years, it was, oh, let me get my doctor's office closer to the people's homes. They have to drive so far. And now it's all hospital managed. Insurance companies are pushing. You can't process the claims without a huge computer and expensive infrastructure. So basically, it's all migrating back to get back onto the campus. And those office complexes like at Tucson Boulevard and Pima, or those odd little places tucked away in neighborhoods, probably don't have a great future, at least for the foreseeable future, as everything shifts back to the campus and hospital run. And then the last thing I'll throw out there, it's probably more political and funding, but it does affect us, is Medicaid. We don't think a lot about Medicaid. But Medicaid pays for about $12 billion of services in Arizona every year. I don't have the exact breakdown, but probably $2 to $2.5 billion comes to Pima County. Medicaid is people who are poor, below the poverty level. They get medical care and they get mental health care. Probably 1 in 5 adults, and I think it's half of all children are covered by Medicaid. So you'll think about it, but it's a big force in a market where the insurance companies and who's paying for the care is paying for everything. The state of Arizona had a very nicely set up system that was modeled. Other states came and watched us. They actually went to a private, they called them REBAs, if you heard CPSA, if you heard of those folks. They divide the state up in regions. They gave a nonprofit or a manager the Medicaid dollars. They said, here's your $2 billion, take care of everybody. Then they would go out and hire the names you probably heard of, the Copes and La Fronteras and Kodaks for the adults, Intermountain or Pantano for the kids. And they would hire these people to take care of them with case managers and track them and have a case manager calling people up. Did you take your medicine? Did you get your refill this month? You didn't go get your refill. Do I need to call you a cab? Should I get your refill for you? You keep them on their medications, and the system worked. They don't get their refills. They destabilize. They end up in a mental health care hospital or having the cops called on when they act up somewhere. Arizona decided 3 months ago they don't like the system anymore. They're switching to giving everybody insurance. So in Phoenix, instead of having Centene or Simpatico run the whole system, they're divvying everybody up. On October 1st, they'll all get insurance cards, and they have 7 different insurance companies: United Healthcare, Centene bought HealthNet, Mercy Care, and a bunch of others. And in Tucson, there's going to be 3 insurance companies: United Health, I think Simpatico, HealthNet kept a third, and I think Mercy Care, I forget. So what's going to happen is the seriously mentally ill people will still be overseen by an agency, but 90% of the people will now have insurance. And they'll have a card in their wallet like we all do. And a lot of people are, A, worried about, well, who's watching over them if they just have an insurance card? And B, the insurance company reimbursements are way lower than they were before with people already kind of stressed. So I think we aren't going to, around October 1st, I hope I'm wrong because I have really pessimistic thoughts, that A, someone is not going to be supervising these people and there's going to be a lot more police-involved interventions. And then B, they're going to be paying all the agencies locally a lot less. And so a lot of these agencies, which actually have a lot of office space and have a lot of employees, are going to be getting 20, 30% less, maybe 40% less money and trying to bill insurance companies and argue for the money. And so, yeah, so if you think about the people in the industry have their eyes wide like, oh my God, what's going to happen? So I'm a little worried about what happens to that industry on October 1st. We'll have to track it. And I really hope I'm wrong and that I've missed something, but I'm afraid I'm not. So anyways, that's it for the office market. Sorry to end on a negative note. Let's go back to the 20% to 11% one.